A lot of fantasy features an evil that has been banished, not defeated, just tucked away for later. It might be because somebody made a choice, or maybe it was because these heroes of old were not powerful enough to defeat whatever the villain was. Players don't typically consider banishment a viable option because our players are not heroes from legend. They're players in a game, and they don't see these ancient evils as insurmountable odds, and there's no negative repercussions for them not to slay Loth instead of banishing her. But as a dungeon master, it should be nice if, Tiamat was able to come back next campaign and mess those adventures as well. So let's change that. Hi, I'm James. I've been a dungeon master for over 28 years, and on this channel I talk about the things that I think about, plan, and plot for my tabletop role-playing games. If you like that kind of content, then there's buttons down there for like and subscribe. Today I'm thinking about how sealing the evil is such a core part of fantasy fiction, and I want to put it in my fantasy games, and how can I do that without railroading the players into it? Passed down to us by any number of fantasy authors, Tolkien, Jordan, Martin, Moorcock, is the idea that the fantasy worlds are in decline. We are not now that strength which in olden days moved earth and heaven. Even in ancient myth, the idea is that the humans are not as great as the gods that created them, and the gods are not as great as the titans that came before them, and the titans are not as great as the primortals that came before them. And I know somebody is typing in there, but the gods defeated the titans. Yes, but only because the titans were not unified. Prometheus, Themis, others joined the gods, while still others like Oceanus and Rhea stayed out of the Titanomachy altogether. The same thing happened when Cronus usurped his father's position. Gaia supported Cronus against Uranus. The problem with this kind of generational decay, where each generation is less powerful than the one that came before it, is that it tames the world.
The world's still the same. It's just less in it.
With Tiamat slain, the Flacner Vecna destroyed, Demogorgon Asmodeus turned to ash, what adventure is left? Whatever evil comes after these greater evils can only be less than that what came before, because sewn into our idea of fantasy is entropy. Power, evil, energy can only become less concentrated, not more. And that works in books and fictions because we want to know that this journey, all the sacrifices that our heroes made, were worthwhile, that they bought a better world with their sacrifices. Would we want a sequel to The Lord of the Rings where Tolkien says, all that stuff that Frodo had to go through to get to destroying the ring? It bought 20 years. Let's resurrect Sauron. I am compelled by my sense of completionism to point out that technically Tolkien did start a sequel to Lord of the Rings, but because he never finished it, I don't personally consider that canon. And Sauron is not technically dead at the end of the Lord of the Rings, but he is reduced to a spirit of malice that gnaws on itself in the shadows and cannot again grow or take shape. But I don't want a world where Tiamat is reduced to a spirit of malice. Sealing the evil keeps that tension alive. There's a sense that the world is balanced on a knife's edge. That which is contained could always return at any moment, and that world always needs adventurers. And it adds weight to the past. If these adventurers from times long gone had to seal evil instead of destroying it outright, then it must have been beyond those heroes of the past, which, by the nature of fantasy, had to be more powerful than our modern day heroes, making the deeds of our heroes even more epic when they do manage to rise to those heroes of ages. That idea matters. It just doesn't survive contact with the players. Fictional characters, books, movies, television, anime, are aware of the realities of their world. They do not know that they're exceptional. Players, rightfully so, believe that their characters are the exception to the rule. Most players, when they see a Balrog on the bridge, will go, "Woohoo! Boss fight!" And the game itself reinforces this. Problems are meant to be eliminated. Defeat enemies to gain rewards and then move forward. Resolution comes from removal. You can, and I do, give experience to the players retreat from combat, try and fail to convince the queen to do something. You have tried something, you've learned something from that, and that learning is represented by experience, but that is more fitting for a conversation about what should or should not get experience. Sealing evil away doesn't feel like a victory in that framework. It feels unfinished. If you present the players with two options, seal the evil away or destroy it forever, that is not a great decision because there is a clear, better answer. Destroy the evil forever. You can't expect the players to choose the worst option just because it's a more poetic outcome. They're not trying to write a story. They're trying to succeed at the game in front of them, or at least have their characters survive. There are some players that will choose the more compelling narrative option. That player is typically outnumbered by the other 3 to 4 players at the table with less dramatic interests. So if we want our players to consider sealing evil as a viable option to defeating our BBEG, then we need to change what success looks like. We need to make destroying evil in its own way just as dangerous as sealing it away. The world itself needs a rule, ideally something consistent and flexible so that we can use it in a lot of different situations as Dungeon Masters, and something that is simple to explain so the players can immediately grasp onto what it means and start playing around with the implications without a lot of talking about all the side tangents and things that this could go into. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. In our fantasy settings, evil, souls, beliefs, chaos, these are more than just ideas. They are power. They're energy. Why does the evil cult want to kill a bunch of villagers? Because blood and souls are energy. Why does the evil god want a bunch of new followers? Because belief is energy. Why does Vecna want whatever evil artifact he's seeking this time? Because he wants magical energy. These beings are collecting energy in themselves or in an evil artifact, and they're going to use it to pursue their evil plans. In our world, if you destroy something that's holding a bunch of energy, like say an atom, that energy goes somewhere. If evil is power, like it is in most of our TTRPG worlds, and Orcus is gathering power unto himself over the millennia, then that power is real. It is concentrated, shaped, tainted, and held together by Orcus's existence. And when our players slay Orcus, that death is going to release all of that power, all of that energy. If you destroy Orcus in the Abyss, then the energy is dispersed into a place that is already kind of defined by that chaotic evil energy. It's like setting off a nuke in the exclusion zone around Chernobyl. It is not good, but it's just more radiation in a place already defined by radiation. But good luck convincing your players to march into the Abyss to destroy Orcus. No, there's no way. Like, going in the Abyss, that's a suicide mission. I like playing Thrax. I would like to keep playing Thrax, so we're going to have to find another way. Depending on the game that you're playing, it may be easier or harder to kill Orcus here on this world, this material plane, this dimension, whatever it is. But your players will find a way.
Life, finds a way.
If at all plausible, part of our job as a Dungeon Master is to say yes. And that and is our in. If they manage to kill something like our BBEG here on the material plane, it behaves very differently. The energy doesn't just float away on the wind. It erupts. Violently. At the smaller scale of like the imp or the shadow demon, it's not a big enough deal. The world can absorb that kind of petty evil without much of a problem. Maybe for a few days, people in the village are a little bit crankier, maybe food starts to spoil or the flowers on the table start to wilt, something like that. If you absolutely must have mechanics for this kind of thing, then I'd say maybe persuasion is at a disadvantage for the next few days, while intimidation is at advantage, but I honestly wouldn't even bother. Except for maybe if I wanted to telegraph something, use this later for a bigger effect, or I wanted to keep it reserved in case I want to use it for the BBEG, in which case I telegraph it by my description. As the shadow demon dies, all the lights are swept out by a wave of darkness. Immediately they snap back to life, and you notice that all the food on the table is spoiled, the wine reeks of vinegar, and all the flowers have died. There's now a black scar on the stone where the shadow demon met its end. In the mid-tiers, for like a Rock or Arenas, I'd have a temporary, like a month or a season kind of effect, or something that is fixable by the players. The players can do an arcane check, detect magic, maybe there's someone that they know that can help them figure out what they need to do, but the goal here is to get the players to realize that when they kill one of these outsider or powerful creatures in an area, that it is going to have an effect on the area, and now they need to go fix it. I do something like maybe a small pocket of wild magic if they killed a demon or a fae, and a pocket of dead magic if they killed an angel or a devil in this area. Maybe the soul around the village where they just killed whatever this thing is now desecrated or even more plentiful. Maybe any evil creature or good creature in the area, depending on what died, now has advantage with spells or attacks in the area. Or we could do a riff on something from an old edition, 3.5, where any undead in the area has functionally the bless spell naturally cast on them, or necromancers that create undead in this area create more powerful or more plentiful undead. They used to have the consecrate spell to get rid of things like this, but that's gone now, so maybe we just use the remove curse spell to get rid of the effect. Does that potentially encourage players to kill an angelic being? Mechanically, yes, but then they're not good characters anymore, and everybody else in the world is going to react to what they're doing, because it is definitively an evil thing to do to kill an angel. And I'm okay with evil player characters as long as they're willing to deal with the consequences. Would an angelic being willingly give up power to fix a kind of problem, to sanctify an area? Yeah, if it's important enough and the players are persuasive enough, then sure, it sounds like an angelic thing to do to me. At higher levels, like these super ancient liches like a Sararak and Vecna with archdevils, archfey, archangels, and definitely our BBEG, is a catastrophe, somewhere between Chernobyl and a supervolcano going off. Entire kingdoms, entire countrysides may be warped by evil magic for generations. Off the top of my head, every crop is immediately destroyed. Undead start rising spontaneously. Maybe a plague starts to sweep across the land and is going to bother this entire kingdom, this entire world. Maybe killing Orcus is like unleashing a 60-mile cloud kill spell. Anything that can't take 5d8 necrotic damage immediately snuffs it. Maybe killing something like Orcus or Demogorgon is enough to slide this entire country into the abyss. I cannot stress enough how important telegraphing, forewarning, foreshadowing, whatever you want to call it, is if you're going to introduce and use this kind of thing. Because when your players heroically defeat the BBEG only to have this surprised on them, they're going to feel like you stole their victory from them. And that is not the goal. That is being an asshole. So you need to find a way to let them make checks, prompt them to make checks, have some NPC explain it to them when the stakes are low, like when they kill an imp, so that you can get them to say, what the hell just happened? And then you can explain it to them when it's safe. And then you can drop it later when it happens. But you're going to have to remind them a couple times that this is the thing, that this happened here, then this happened here, then this happened here, and then they'll go, oh, yeah, or better yet, wait. We can't go killing Lolth right here, because if we do, she is going to explode and blow up Waterdeep. We want the players to make informed choices. They can destroy the evil outright, completely annihilate it, never have to deal with that evil again, but do have to deal with the consequences. Or they can banish the evil, not have any of the negative consequences, but it could come back later. Or maybe the players come up with some inspired third option. That's great, because that's player agency, but that only happens if neither option is clean. Neither option is immediately correct. There's always a concern when you somehow complicate, muddy the waters of a player choice that you're somehow removing player agency. You are not. The players can still kill the villain. We're not stopping them. We're just adding the and to the yes and. The outcome's not predetermined. What's changed is how the world responds, and it now responds in a way that makes sense. Actions have consequences beyond the immediate moment. That is not railroading, that is consistency. And more importantly, it's creating an actual choice. Because player agency doesn't come from selecting the obvious right answer from a couple wrong answers, but selecting the right answer for right now. And when the players start bickering about which one of these answers is the right one, the thing that they should do, that is where role-playing lives. When the players stop treating encounters like obstacles to just be removed from their path, but from decisions to be made. They're deciding what kind of world to leave behind. Until next time, Dungeon Masters, remember you're a player too. Try to have some fun.
Hi, Questers.